Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today to talk about timely Excel visualizations for evolving healthcare challenges. My name is Scott Everitt. I'm the Vice President of Healthcare Solutions here at Practical Data Solutions. I'm joined today by Michele Perry, who's our Vice President of Service Delivery and Web Analytics. Welcome, Michele.
Hi, Scott. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining.
So, Michele, obviously, we're in a very different time right now, and some of the changes that have come about from the pandemic have required our clients to come to us about some different types of reporting, and what they really needed was fast turnaround. They needed some different data sets that maybe they hadn't incorporated before, and they had to get something out to management and executives and providers that looked good, but also gave some needed data or different data. And what you're seeing here is an example of a dashboard that we were able to turn around in about a day. And this, believe it or not, is shown in Excel. A lot of people don't know Excel can be a good visualization tool like this. This is something that we want to talk about today, is how you can utilize some of the benefits of Excel in order to really help during critical times.
Yeah, Scott, certainly society is changing as we speak. So before we get into the meat of today's webcast, I'd like to take a little poll. It should be showing up on your screen. And we'd just like to know, so what tools are you using for visualization or graphical dashboards today? Are you using Microsoft Excel, which is the topic for today's webcast, or are you using some of the other analytical tools like Tableau, Microsoft Power BI, MicroStrategy, or there's other products on the market? A lot of organizations are using combinations of maybe Excel and an analytic tool. I've even worked with some organizations that are using multiple analytics tools. So I don't know that there's really one right answer.
Okay, let's see what we've got here. It looks like about 63% are Microsoft Excel, which is good. We want to talk about this. This actually is similar results to another one we did for another webinar earlier this year that showed that, Microsoft Excel is still what is being used mostly for reporting, visualization, dashboarding in the industry today. And when you think about it, it's a little surprising that it's not more. I don't know, Michele, if the CEO is going to watch this today or not, but I'm going to let everybody in on a little secret here. Even though our clients use some of the most cutting-edge analytical tools available in the market today, we still use Excel kind of a lot. And I don't know why we're shy about it. I don't know why it seems to be kind of the bad word for reporting out there. I get emails every day, stop using Excel, use our tool. Excel is really powerful. There are a lot of great advantages for using Excel. And like we talked about, quick turnaround is the first one. People know what they're doing with Excel. They're learning Excel in junior high and in high school. You can make dashboards that look exactly the way you want them. You have just complete control of your layout flexibility. There's being able to bring different data sets in, do different delivery reports. I don't know why it's such a bad word nowadays.
Yeah, Scott, Excel is definitely powerful, and with today's changing environment, we need to really do things very rapidly and quickly. So there's, in my mind, a lot of myths or perceptions. I hear people saying Excel is outdated, it's not state-of-the-art. Well, we can show you with some of the examples today that Excel can be very powerful. It's beyond just a spreadsheet tool when it first came out, where it's just doing some number calculations. People perceive it to be not as attractive as some of the higher end analytic tools. You'll see during today's webcast that it can be very appealing. There's lots of good features and options that are available to really give graphical representation of data, so you can get a story with your data, and also can be interactive. Some of the other things I hear, as you mentioned, Scott, hear from our clients, well, I can't get to the details. I have to have all of the background information. Well, you can do that by doing some drills and doing some links. So we'll show some of that during today's webcast. And then one of the other items that I hear often is that, it's very manual. If I want to create a dashboard for each of my providers, I may have hundreds, possibly thousands of providers. Well, here at PDS, we have a tool that allows you to automate that dashboard creation and eliminate some of that manual work. And we'll talk about that towards the end of today's webcast. So what we see with Excel is people see this spreadsheet, for example, what's on the screen. This may not look very attractive. This is probably why people may not look at Excel as a visualization tool. There's no areas to focus. It really needs probably some improvement, I think. So we can look at another example here, which is a little bit cleaner.
Yeah, I mean, you can clean it up by adding some colors, some trend indicators, things like that, removing the grid lines. It helps make it a little bit more attractive. But at the end of the day, it meets the intent of the report, I guess, but it's still really busy. It's not really appealing, and there's a lot to digest here. We could add even some additional trends, I guess, to go in, some additional months to analyze if we wanted to make sure that we're seeing all the spikes or valleys that are occurring in that. But even at the end of the day, when we talk about visualization, visualizing means we want to be able to allow our providers, to allow our managers, executives to make an immediate evaluation. And so what we're talking about in a visualization is something more like this. Okay, what you can see right here is something where I can look at this and in a matter of seconds, I know where my focus needs to go. So, for example, during the pandemic, we could see something like we really have revenue cycle performance issues. Our aged AR could be going through the roof because people working from home haven't been as productive, or we've had to furlough some staff, something like that. And we need to make sure that we get that back under control. Our coding status with telehealth could have changed, and we need to be able to see that. I want to be able to look at that and immediately make the conclusion of where we're struggling, where we're not meeting our goal. This quick answers type thing allows me to focus in on 4 or 5 key things and be able to look at those and then drill a little deeper and not really worry so much about the areas where we're doing okay. So this is a good example of taking Excel and the power of it to make it truly visual for what we need to get to from a management standpoint.
Yeah, Scott, you mentioned drill. So you can see underneath each of those graphs, I've gotten an analyze. And that analyze can drill you into analytics. A lot of the analytics tools allow you to put URLs that you can then go to. You may also just drill to another worksheet or another spreadsheet that you have. And then another thing that I find important, especially if you're maybe changing what's on your reports because of the current pandemic, is using just a simple note that explain. The user can hover over that and quickly understand the data, understand the definitions, what's actually being displayed on the dashboard, because we've got to make sure that they interpret it correctly. So by giving those definitions, it's a quick way to give them information in their hands immediately. So when we talk about analytics, and there's more and more data in people's hands today, we also talk about the analytical intensity. So as an organization grows with their analytics, so does their analytical intensity. That last example we looked at was sort of the middle. We had some benchmarkings with the codings, which we may need to change depending on where we are with telehealth. And then those first few examples that we looked at were more probably towards the lower end, data summarizations, trend analysis, doing some just time comparisons. Did have some visuals where I said indicators and graphs. But again, so working up that graph. And later on in today's webcast, we'll look at the higher end intensity levels. So with that, we'd like to take another poll. And so on average, where is your organization's reporting with regard to analytical intensity? So are you doing mostly data summarizations, which is still getting good data out to people, but it's more lower level? Or are you somewhere in the middle, looking at trend analysis, benchmarking, or maybe possibly even towards the higher end relationship analysis or that higher end of projections?
Yeah, so Michele, I think it's important to note too that you may have multiple reports or dashboards in your organization, and certainly not every dashboard is appropriate to use all of these, or even the highest level of ones. Some of them, really all you're looking for is a trend analysis. So I think what we're really looking for is typically, where do you guys go? Okay, so interesting. It looks like most people are at about the benchmarking level, which is good. Benchmarking is important, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Looks like the rest are kind of in trend analysis, and then some are at the highest level, some are at the lowest level as well. So thank you for responding to that. What I'd like to do is get back to that dashboard where we opened the presentation and talk a little bit about this, because again, this is one that was brought about due to critical needs brought about by the change in the way we do things with the pandemic. We have a lot of clients, obviously, with having to refocus staff in certain areas to deal with COVID. In addition to shutting down a lot of their other business that's out there, they really wanted to focus in on how patients were contacting the organization, kind of a patient contact type thing, and how that's changed over time during the pandemic. One of the things you'll notice then is you'll see that more and more patients have been moving to telephone and telehealth type things, and that was enabled through increases in reimbursement. But this is a particular dashboard that required us to get data from different sources. It would have been maybe difficult to do this in a high-end analytical tool where I was able to turn this around in Excel in less than a day, because we had to bring in data from scheduling, data from billing, reimbursement type data, and look at that in different ways. And I could create a highly visual dashboard that shows us not only what did happen, but in looking forward, we can see things like telehealth. Telehealth, I think, is going to be here to stay. I was just reading an article the other day about how senators want to make some of the changes that happened with telehealth during the pandemic permanent. Patients seem to really like it a lot. Providers seem to like it a lot. There are some definite efficiencies that come from it. It's how can you work that with reimbursement? And you can see something here where we were able to look right away and see, well, you can see a certain number of patients in an office per hour versus telehealth per hour, and so your reimbursement may kind of work out about the same per hour if you did make those changes. So there may be some efficiencies to be gained that way. But what we're talking about here is we were able to do the calculations, the staging, and the visualization in Excel very quickly and get this out because there was a critical need that was there.
Yeah, Scott. So here at PDS, we have a library of design templates with various formats, and we're going to go through a few of those examples today. So, as we mentioned, with changing in reports, you may need to change the formats that you're utilizing today. So we've got some of the formats are sort of the encyclopedia, which I call sort of very detailed, and there's situations where that's important. But you may want to get to quick answers, more summary focus areas. We have template designs with KPIs that we'll look at in a few slides here. And then we showed some examples of benchmarking. And then the one of the other examples is that telehealth example, which is more what we refer to as sort of an infographic. So these design templates are available. Our clients utilize them. They may take one section from one, so you can mix and match the different templates to meet your reporting needs.
Yeah, so this is a great thing to have for our clients as well, because they can look at lots of different subject areas that are out there. And again, during changing times like we're seeing right now, they can find a lot of different content areas that can help them design whatever needs to go out or be published anew. At PDS, we talk a little bit about how to really successfully design and implement and publish visual dashboards. And we have what we call our 4 phases. First of all, being define your goals. What is it that you're really trying to get to? What is your organization trying to do? And what are the key drivers or metrics that you're going to need to understand and access and be able to get to for that? And are they really what you're going for? Do they really measure what you think you're measuring?
Right. And Scott, once you've got those identified, we really need to understand, where am I going to get the data? Do I have the data that I need? So it's really that phase 2 of understanding the data, identifying the data sources. Do I need to do some data transformation to the data? Maybe I have a key measure that I really need, but I can't get to it today because it's not available. With the current changes, maybe it's something that somebody's manually doing. So it's really understanding the data. And then this is where Excel definitely can come in. Maybe I model a small set of data to look to make sure that my relationships are correct. And then I can use that to build on in the next phase.
Yeah, I think that's a key. That's phase 3 is the pilot. And like you just said, Michele, you really hit it on the head where Excel is incredible for a pilot because you can utilize real data. You can put it into designs and you can send it out easily. You can publish it, receive feedback, get it back, say, well, I want this here, I want this there, I don't want to show this, I want to show more time periods. And changes in Excel are a lot easier to make than they are in a lot of the other tools. So being able to make those changes in a matter of seconds based upon the feedback is there, and you can really get the full end design that you want designed just out in Excel before you publish it in your end production.
Right. And then once you've got that, again, using Excel allows for quick changes. You can then start working towards that final phase, which is to optimize for production. And that optimization really depends on where your organization's strategy is. If you're more Excel driven, maybe you want to work on sort of automating some processes, automating the data. How am I going to refresh? What's the frequency refresh rate? If you're using the higher end analytics tools, you're going to work towards optimizing my data modeling and processing of ETL. I probably need to work on some finalizing user security. So again, where you are depends on what that optimization for production really is. So again, making sure you're being as efficient as possible so you can get those dashboards out as quickly and efficiently.
This is just kind of a brief summary of our process, the 4 phases. We've recently published a white paper on this. If you're interested in getting a little bit more detail or digging down a little bit more, contact us and we'd be happy to get this white paper out to you if you'd like to know a little bit more.
So I mentioned earlier on in the presentation of the PDS product called PDS Dash, and that's a software application that, as I mentioned, really helps with some of what people may perceive as the cons of Excel. It's not easy to automate. With Dash, it will help address some of that automation. You can automate blending data, and obviously automation also limits some of your errors that could potentially occur. Dash allows you to create discrete files that can be easily distributed without having to use any complex macros or anything like that. And it really simplifies blending data from multiple different data sources so you can really get the dashboard with all of the key measures in order to provide the business requirements. And a lot of these, again, the source of it is the templates is the Excel, so modifications can be really made on the fly. You can change the frequency of delivering your dashboards from weekly to monthly just by refreshing your data. So let's take a little bit more detail at some of the dashboard designs that we spoke about earlier.
Yeah, so this is a good example of piloting, like we talked a little bit about before, Michele, where this is one where we're starting to open back up after the pandemic, and we wanted to start looking at some more utilization patterns or some patient access patterns for our providers and really get a good understanding of this. This is a good Excel visualization that's out there. You can see you have some trend indicators that show red, yellow, green, doing good here, I'm doing bad here, here's where I need to focus my efforts. We've got that immediate evaluation like we like to talk about, and we've got just kind of a handful of measures of what we want to look at, ranging from scheduling measures to also some patient satisfaction measures. So we brought in a couple of different data sets in order to get to this.
Yeah, Scott, one thing that I really like about using the Excel dashboards is that changes can be quickly made. So, with the changes in operations, with the pandemic, that 6-month look back may not be no longer relative because we've changed operations. So maybe I just want to take those out, and I can quickly do that during that pilot phase where I'm working with my end users to meet their requirements, or maybe just hide some columns. Again, with the quick use of Excel, I can do that very quickly, get some feedback, and see where we need to move from there. Another example may be that some of those measures that we were looking at really may no longer be effective based on today's workings. So maybe I just want to hide some rows, or maybe the user says, you know what, I just want to focus on fewer measures. Let's just focus on these key things. And there's really no right or wrong answer. It's really what's going to work best for your organization, what's going to work best for your end users so they can get and work towards optimizing and doing process improvement.
So we talked a little bit about the next step then in analytical intensity is benchmarking. And obviously benchmarking is where most of this audience has said they're at within their organization. And Excel can really be great for benchmarking because you can bring in those external data sets that are out there without any sort of complex import process or joins or anything like that. They can just be brought directly in and applied. Now, this is one where you can look at and you can bring in your organization, compare it to the industry, compare it to whatever organizational goal you have set, and you can see right away, here's where we're meeting goals, here's where we're not meeting goals. And you can see the X's and the check marks show you, highlight immediately where we're doing fine, where we're doing good. One of the things I like about this versus, say, the stoplights is, as someone who's colorblind, I'm not guessing here on these. I can tell you right away, this is good, this is bad. Now, with changes in the way we've operated, we may not be hitting benchmarks. We may need to adjust goals. Well, the goals can be easily changed because of the way the pandemic has changed things, so that we can really get to exactly where we expect to be and look and make sure we're performing at the level we need to be moving towards.
Yes, Scott, benchmarks definitely push and improve our providers and our organization ahead. So just here's another example that basically has two main focus areas. I've got the physician and my team members or staff, and I can quickly focus on those two areas. Look what my overall rating is for patient satisfaction. Today, that's even more important because we're slowly coming back to seeing people in the office. However, we're still also doing telehealth. Our processes when patients come into the office has changed, but we may want to make sure that we're still focusing on the patient and we're not really focusing on processes before we see the patient. So we want to maybe look at some of those more detailed survey topics and see where we may need to improve. And I can quickly see with the positive and negatives on that charting what's going right versus left, where I may need to do some focus.
Yeah, this is a great example, Michele, of the power of Excel, because I showed this to someone the other day and they're like, that's Excel? You know, it certainly doesn't look that way because it's really very visually appealing with the icons and things like that. It grabs your attention right away, and you can see immediately the colors are so bold that you know right away where you're performing well and where you're struggling. And the thing I like about this is, from a layout standpoint, you'll notice we set the bar, the average of above or below. We didn't set that at 50%. We set it at 75%. Because that's the goal that we're expected to achieve, even with the changes that are out there and the way we change and need to do business. We need to be at that 75th percentile as an organizational goal. And so being able to show from what our organizational target is versus some arbitrary benchmark or some arbitrary figure percentile put out by the polling company, that helps us a lot as well in terms of the flexibility that we have in reporting. You know, attention grabbing, icon data sets, things like that. These really do help in getting a good feedback from the audience in terms of they'll use it, it's engaging. There's not a lot of numbers to dig through. This is a different dashboard. And again, leveraging Excel, what's good about this is an HR type dashboard where HR isn't necessarily a data set that's found in your data warehouse or staged to be there. So you may have had to do some sort of other data dump. Well, that doesn't mean you have to make a dashboard that's not really very visually appealing. You can create nice looking, good dashboards with the metrics that people need and the trends that they need in order to be able to make judgments with different data sets. This is HR. You may want to do something with call centers or patient or provider or employee satisfaction figures, all of these kind of outlying data sets. Excel allows you to create, again, very quickly, turn those around in difficult times or different times because you don't know what you're going to be asked to do next.
Yeah, Scott, and I like that from an HR perspective. Again, most of HR are more people-orientated, so it's very visual, it's very appealing versus some number-driven. So I think they'll really relate to this dashboard because it's very attractive. One of the other perceptions I hear from end users is that they think it's, when I think Excel, I think more static. So we've been talking about how Excel can be visual. Well, here's just an example, a very simple example of how it can be interactive. I can go through and look at my different divisions. All of my charts change. I can see how they're comparing. I can also look at all of the organization as a whole by just simply clicking on the total. So again, I can quickly get results and answers and make it more interactive. We talked about doing links, whether it be links within your dashboard or out to your analytics. That's another way that you can make your dashboards more interactive. You can even do links within your workbook, so you can sort of guide your user and have the data tell their story by guiding them through some just mini links throughout your dashboard. So that's just some other ways that you can really bring the power of Excel to your end users.
While we're talking about being interactive, Michele, I think moving away from the graphical type things into the power that's there, you can create your own kind of mini data marts when you need to. Now, this may not be a great thing for, a full-on data set at a large organization, but this is definitely something that can provide analysts or people who need a little bit more work with the data to be able to go in and play with the data a little bit more. In addition to that, it allows you to go in and create your own customized categories for work RVU, productivity, lag, patient satisfaction, etc. And you can go do that next higher level on the tier, which is the relationship analysis. You can start correlating things and saying, high work RVU productivity, does that correlate to low patient satisfaction or vice versa? You can start looking at all of these different areas, and really as a clinic manager, medical director, you can utilize this to really find your problem areas. You can look at the ones who are doing well and try to emulate that behavior as well.
Yeah, Scott, this is a great example where you can use Excel to leverage and get results out very quickly while you're continuing to build on your enterprise analytics solution. So this may not be a long-term solution especially for an organization that has lots of providers, because there's going to be some limitations with Excel, but it's a great way to get started, and it's a great way to prove sort of like you mentioned, your relationships and move towards that full enterprise analytics solution.
So let's go ahead and move on to the next stage that we talked about before, is the modeling or projections. And really, when you have such massive changes like we've had recently with the pandemic, you might want to model out where you're expected to end the year or to fight the fiscal period. I've been doing some work with dynamic budgeting and things like that. And really, Excel is so powerful for things like that. What we're looking at here is something that we do a lot, where we call it performance opportunity dashboards. And what we're trying to do with this is really leverage the known. What is it that we know, and how can we project that out? So what you can see right here is this is around the area of denials. Now, we can make this a little bit interactive, and we can look, you can see below, we could look by denial type. Right now we're looking at all denials, but we could look at, say, I just want to look at registration denials or billing and coding denials. Okay, you can see when I go to registration, it changes, and now I'm looking at a location level. Billing and coding, I'm looking at a billing area level, or documentation, I'd look at a provider level. And all of these things here give us that information. But what we're trying to do is look at these counts and these rates that are out there. And by looking at those rates, we can then look at each individual entity within the group, or we can look at the division, department, location as a whole. And you'll see here what we're going to do is we're going to start comparing and saying certain areas are performing better than the average, certain are performing worse. And then we're going to find cost savings that may be attached to that. So it costs $32 to rework a denial, or $40, or whatever estimate you want to put into something like that. And then we can look and we can say, look, okay, Bay City Cardio has a denial rate that's quite a bit higher than the department average. So if they were able to perform even at the level of the department, well, for them in particular, that would result in a cost savings of almost $23,000. Okay, being able to model this out allows us to attach kind of a cost of doing business to the way that we're performing. If we want to look at the denial recoveries that are out there and how much we're actually bringing in on appeal, and some areas, again, are performing better than others. If you look at like Madison County, if they were performing at the department average, It's almost $26,000 that they would be able to bring in over time. During times where we've seen where we had to shut down a lot of our services, every dollar is important. Recovery dollars can be very critical, and finding where we can focus our efforts and find low-hanging fruit like this can really help us to improve and get back to the levels that we need to get to. In addition to that, it really highlights the highest opportunities that are out there. So as an executive or as a manager, I can look at the 2-3 areas where my highest opportunities are, go after those first, and get 80% of the return for 20% of the effort that falls into that. And so we do these performance opportunity dashboards around all kinds of different areas of the revenue cycle, ranging from provider scheduling utilization to charge lag to work RVU productivity, E&M coding. All of these things can be done this way, and really they're compelling arguments for changing the ways that we do things and really getting up to a higher level of performance within the organization, where sometimes change is hard to drive. When they can see definite financial benefit of moving in that direction, that can be a very compelling argument to move that way.
Scott, you say C. I find this dashboard very informative and valuable. And I know you're more of a numbers person. I'm more of a visual person. So you got something that looks a little bit more visual, but still brings it to that high analytical intensity.
Fine. Here, is that better?
Thank you. Thank you. Much more visual. I like that. But it still brings me up to that higher intensity. I can still look for projecting results and looking for improvements based on my outcome. So I like that a lot better. Thank you. Not that numbers aren't good, but I'm a little bit more visual. So I want to make sure I'm listening to my audience and giving them what they need.
That really speaks again to another advantage of Excel, Michele, is that there are different audiences that are out there, and we can create different dashboards, and there's really not a ton of effort involved in order to do that.
Yeah, that's very true, Scott. So the last few dashboards that we looked at were in that higher level where we were looking at relationship analysis, looking at work RVUs to patient satisfaction and charge lag and coding. And then that last, we were looking at the projections and looking for what's the outcome if we make improvements. So that brings us to another poll that we have. Do you use dashboards that quantify or project potential performance improvements? No. B is occasionally, often, all of the time. And different departments may have within your organization, maybe at different levels. So sort of in general, are you doing any of these, or what we refer to as performance opportunities?
Okay. All right. It looks like most in the crowd are doing it occasionally. Some are doing it fairly often, and then several aren't doing it yet. And so, maybe we've given you something to think about and look forward to, and maybe working on that in your organizations. We wanted to talk a little bit about Excel is a nice product to have because most everybody has it. And so distributing dashboards, you can get it out to people and they're usually able to utilize it. However, again, if you have a large organization, that can get a little bit tricky sometimes. Now, how you want to do that really depends on your organization. Some are more of a push organization. Others are more of a pull organization. At PDS, we do have a couple of tools that can help either way in automating this process. We have a tool called Distributor, which is a tool that allows these reports to be emailed out on an automated fashion at month end or as frequently as they're pulled and sent out that way. And if you're really more of a push organization.
Right. And then we have another tool called PDS Portal that is more of a pull. So it's a web portal where users can log in and pull down or view their dashboards with just a few simple clicks. The application handles security, so users only see what they're authorized to see. It has a lot of flexibility with administrators can view individual providers' reports as well as dashboard reports. So again, there's no right or wrong method for distribution. We have many organizations that are doing both, the push and the pull. So you can easily get those reports out to users. With Excel, sometimes the files can get a little bit large, so emailing, so you may want to use both distribution processes with your dashboards.
So I think, Michele, if we were to get just a couple of things out of what we talked about today, it's don't be afraid of Excel. Don't be afraid to use Excel as a way of getting a quick result out to your staff. You really have a lot of powerful visualizations that you can utilize out there. It's not just a spreadsheet. It doesn't have to be ugly with a bunch of lines and borders and things like that. You can really make a nice visualization that's sent out. And really, especially during this time where needs are different, needs are critical. You have to get things out quickly. You have to get different things out than you've ever done before. Excel is a great tool for getting those out. Now, you may make those permanent. You may put them into an analytical tool afterwards, but utilizing the ability to design and the calculations. I know a lot of our programmers and BI analysts have told me if they can see the calculations I've used in Excel, it helps them a lot with what they're trying to do to program it into an ETL or within the BI. So Excel can really be a great tool for that.
Yeah, it's definitely not. I started sort of a number crunching tool. It's really brought us with lots of visualizations. As you mentioned, it's a good design tool. So in these times where we need to get rapid development, while maybe the ETL or the programmers are getting the analytics ready, I can get something in the user's hands quickly by using Excel, again, as a short-term solution or maybe even as a long-term solution, depending on where you are.
All right. Well, thank you very much for attending today. We appreciate your time. For everybody out there, please let your providers know. Thank them for being heroes during this time. Thank you, everyone.